Bandeham Shri Guru Shiyata Parakamlam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishikam Vitam Sya Om Jnana Timaranda Shagyana Jana Shalakya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gorva Bhistam Supurakam Gurganarasisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipunam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Bidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Mande Vishwa Gurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Prem Noe Bija Pradam Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Varanam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sareka Varanam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Varam Bande Tam Shubharam Mareka Sharanam Nyashishvara Sridharam Vanshakopatarubyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the hidden treasure of the sweet absolute, with translation by and commentary by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj, and translation in English by Sri Swarupananda Prabhu. And we're reading from chapter 2, which is Sankhya-yoga, the constitution of the soul. And I'll start with verse number 59. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. The embodied being may renounce the sense objects, but the taste for them remains. But that too vanishes for the man of wisdom by his vision of the Supreme. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishva nivartate. Oh. So there's more to renunciation than externally just renouncing, because even though one may renounce something, still the taste for whatever he's renouncing or she's renouncing may remain. And elsewhere Krishna says that if somebody is externally blocking out, or let's just say externally showing himself to be renounced and advanced, but at the same time internally is desiring for the objects of the senses, Krishna says that's mityachar. That's something that's like false. It's like that person is like a hypocrite. So here it said that a taste, even though one is able to renounce so many things, and we saw that with so many persons, they're young, they give up so many things, they renounce those things, and then later in their life, they return to look for the same things that they renounced, because they never could get over the taste or the desire for those things that they were renouncing. But here, Krishna says, but that too, that taste vanishes for the man of wisdom by his vision of the Supreme. And how is that possible? Because we know that by experiencing a higher taste, one can give up lower taste. And also in the case of this, it's even more than that. This is talking about when someone is attaining some actual relationship with the Lord and relationship with devotional service, then that person will lose altogether the inferior taste, which maybe troubled him before. Just like if you talk to devotees, maybe before they were interested in eating meat or something, and even the smell of that meat would attract them. But later, as they're engaged in devotion, there's no attraction from that. Rather, many of us, someone's attracted to smoking, but later, if someone gives up smoking and is engaged in devotion, sometimes the smell of cigarettes on somebody else is very disturbing. Doesn't smell good at all.
Don't know all about it.
So, anyway, the embodied being may renounce the sense objects, but the taste for them remains. But that too vanishes for the man of wisdom by his vision of the Supreme. And yatato yapi konteya purushasya vipaschita indriyani pramatini haranti prasabam mana yatato yapi konteya purushasya vipaschita indriyani pramatini haranti prasabam mana. And yet, O son of Kunti, the turbulent senses can forcibly plunder the mind of even the wise person striving for liberation. And yet, O son of Kunti, the turbulent senses can forcibly plunder the mind of even the wise person striving for liberation. So when we're reading of how Indra would become jealous of somebody who was advanced, he would send some apsara, and then the person may be engaged in meditation or in engaging in yoga, but then the apsara would come, and Indra liked that because he was always a little envious of advanced persons. So he would do that to disturb them. And often successfully he could do that. But we see in the case of Haridas Thakur, he's a namacharya. He could not be disturbed in that way. Rather, on so many occasions, when someone was sent, like by, for instance, Ramachandra Khan, when someone was sent to disturb Haridas Thakur, he could convert by his patience and just chanting. And he would say something like, yes, oh, I will satisfy all your desires, but first I have to finish my monthly quota of rounds, and I'm almost near there. But he never stopped chanting until finally it would happen in the case of the one very beautiful prostitute, that she was converted and she became a devotee. And even Maya Devi came, and when she came, wasn't just a prostitute. This is the personification of enchantment. When she came, then the whole atmosphere changed, and it was glowing and golden, and everything was fragrant, and she came very, very beautiful, and she's showing different parts of her body to Haridas. But it's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita as just like somebody crying in the forest. There's nobody there to hear that person. So Haridas could not be affected. And then Maya Devi, she actually said, the reason I came was to, get from you the holy name. My task is so thankless. My task is thankless. My job is to delude all the persons of this world. But she herself, Daiviyesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratya Mam Evaye Prapadyante Mayametam Tarantite. She herself is Daivi Prakriti. She herself has a connection with the Lord. She's his, you could say, the Lord's agent in charge of the material energy. So she herself always felt that she had this thankless task, and she wanted to get the mercy of the holy name from Haridas Thakur. And she was satisfied. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta. So I'll read again that. And yet, O son of Kunti, the turbulent senses can forcibly plunder the mind of even the wise person striving for liberation. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matpara bhashe I yashendriyani tasya pragya pratistita. Devoted to me, the Bhakti yogi brings his senses under proper control. Firmly established is the wisdom of one whose senses are controlled. So we hear from Srila Rupa Goswami that our form of renunciation isn't the renunciation that was described, that one can give up the objects of the senses, but the taste for those objects still remains. And also it's described how even someone who is apparently very sober and controlled, the senses are so turbulent they can plunder the mind of such a person. But one who's actually engaged, whose senses are under control, that person cannot be disturbed. And Srila Rupa Goswami describes a stage which is called Yukta Vairagya. He says that that under Yukta Vairagya, instead of just artificially renouncing things, the devotee is utilizing everything in the service of the Lord. So sometimes persons, for instance, who are severe renunciant, they'll renounce all money. They'll renounce any kind of facilities, like formerly the sadhus, saintly persons, they would walk everywhere on foot. When Mahaprabhu went to South India, he's walking on foot. Long distance. He walked from, when Rupa Goswami went to visit Mahaprabhu, he's walking from Vrindavan, or Sanatana Goswami, walking from Vrindavan all the way to Jagannath Puri, pardon me. So, but we see in the book, for instance, the golden volcano of divine love. It shows Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur traveling in a motor car, and that was unheard of. That a sadhu would come in a motor car to Vrindavan. But then, when some Brahmin said that Raghunath Das Goswami asked that he would get the blessings of the Brahmins from Vrindavan, and then one foolish Brahmin said, "We are so important that we can bless even Das Goswami." And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur heard that, and he began fasting. And everyone else with him fasted. And finally, they searched and they brought that Brahmin, and that Brahmin came to Saraswati Thakur and he begged forgiveness, and then Saraswati Thakur showed some formal respect to him. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur commented, if I had just been an ordinary Niskinchan Babaji, just a renounced person, then if I heard that, I could just go away. But then he said, but why am I riding in a motor car? I'm taking the position of an acharya, he commented. I'm riding in a motor car. Then I have to defend the dignity of our line. If somebody says something against Das Goswami, he can't just go away. He has to show by his example, and he did. So then that Brahmin came and begged forgiveness. And it just shows you that under Yukta Vairagya, the devotees are utilizing things in the service of the Lord, which many times just a pure renunciant will give these things up. Just like we see that Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, his form of preaching in the West was very different than what was the preaching in India before he went to the West. There, mostly it was sannyasis and brahmacharis in all the ashrams, and they did the preaching, and the grihastas would come and they would take part in the program. But Srila Prabhupada, he's saying that in the West, practically there are no sannyasis and brahmacharis. So he engaged men and women to go to different places, like to England, and open centers there and preach. So that was his style. So that's more of an idea of what is yukta vairagya, that if something can be used in the service of the Lord, then it's false to renounce it. But really what's happening is one is renouncing the sense of personal enjoyment, that, oh, this money or these women, they're for my enjoyment. Rather, one is utilizing those things to the service of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada, he knew how to do that. So even though his way of preaching was different than his god brothers, he had more idea of what it means to preach in the West. So he's utilizing everything. And we can see that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he also did that, because he said, oh, a mridanga can be heard for a little distance, but the printing press can be heard around the world. So he called the printing press the Brihat Mridanga. So he's utilizing everything for preaching, not just renouncing things artificially. Okay. Here it goes on. Jayato, how attachment forms. Jayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodo vijayate. But one whose thoughts dwell on the objects of the senses becomes attached to them. From attachment, desire is born, and from desire, anger arises. But one whose thoughts dwell on the objects of the senses becomes attached to them. From attachment, desire is born, and from desire, anger arises. So when one is, you can see, gross activities are always preceded by subtle. There's always something going on the subtle level, on the mind. So first one's dwelling on the objects of the senses. And what happens? Then one becomes attached to those things. And after attachment, when one cannot satisfy one's senses, when one becomes attached, then one has a desire to enjoy. And when one can't satisfy one's desire, then what happens? One becomes angry. And I remember on one walk, and then with Prabhupada, and there was a conversation, and then we were talking about the false renunciation of some sannyasis, and they're preaching against the grihastas, and then Srila Prabhupada said, what is this? This is just like drinking water underwater on a fast day. So today is Ekadasi. So some people are fasting on Ekadasi. So maybe if they're maybe they're observing a fast of not even taking water, like Nirjala Ekadasi. So they go in the river and they go underwater and no one can see them. So they're gulping down water. So that expression of doing something false is like drinking water underwater on a fast day. So Srila Prabhupada said, what is that? Just because somebody puts on some colored cloth, that makes them qualified? And then because we were talking about an incident where somebody was doing some false preaching. And then I was playing the devil's advocate. And Srila Prabhupada, he said, just see this sannyasi. Because no woman would have him, he thinks that nobody should get married. And then he repeated that. No woman would have him. Then he says nobody should get married. And what is that? He didn't say fox, but Srila Prabhupada said, it's just like the wolf that's trying to reach the grapes, jumping at the grapes. I think the story is about a fox jumping at the grapes. But he said, but maybe it's better with wolf in this case. He said, just like the wolf jumping at the grapes. And he can't reach them, so he just says they're all sour. So that kind of mood. Because we were talking about some false preaching that persons were doing. They were sannyasis, they were traveling by bus and going to temples and stealing brahmacharis. And they were saying, because the grihastas are not qualified, they can't teach you. And this, what happened, then I was discussing this with Prabhupada, so he's making fun of that preaching. He says, just like the wolf, trying to jump for the grapes, he can't reach them, so he says they're all false. So first comes attachment, then desire is born, and from desire anger arises. First contemplation, then desire, and then when person can't satisfy his desire, then anger. Those grapes are all sour anyway. They're, why should I give any attention to that? They're, low class. It's all due to contemplation. Then what happens after that? Krodad bhavati samoha samohat smriti vibrama smriti brahmshad buddhi nasho buddhi nasat pranashyati. Anger gives rise to delusion, and the power of delusion causes forgetfulness. Forgetfulness destroys the intelligence, and when the intelligence is lost, one loses all. Anger gives rise to delusion, and the power of delusion causes forgetfulness. Forgetfulness destroys the intelligence, and when the intelligence is lost, one loses all. So there you see the sequence. Someone's first dwelling on the objects of the senses. One becomes attached. From attachment, from contemplating that attachment, strong desire forms. And when the person can't satisfy that desire, and from desire, anger arises. And then anger gives rise to delusion. When one becomes angry, they forget everything. Anger gives rise to delusion, and the power of delusion causes forgetfulness. Forgetfulness destroys the intelligence, and when the intelligence is lost, one loses all. So, like that, even though one is trying for some devotion, and then one is just engaged in contemplation, desire, inability maybe to satisfy that desire, some anger, then that anger is giving rise to delusion, that's causing forgetfulness. Then when forgetfulness clouds everything, then person forgets who they are, what they're doing, what that person is doing, forgets everything. And in just a moment, this can happen. Ragadvesha vimuktais tu vishayan indriyais charan atma vashar videyatma prasadam adhigacchati. But the integrated person who can control his mind at will and who, free from attraction and repulsion, accepts his worldly necessities through his controlled senses, attains tranquility. But the integrated person who can control his mind at will and who, free from attraction and repulsion, accepts his worldly necessities through his controlled senses, attains tranquility. Well, how can a person be like that? Because they've developed a higher taste. They're not trying to draw their satisfaction from this world. They're already experiencing some satisfaction from the divine plane, from being engaged. They're actually satisfied and happy and they're being happy, engaged in devotion, then they're not subject, to forgetting who they are and what they're doing. But anger is we all have experience how dangerous anger is. One becomes angry, and contemplation of the senses. I remember, where was it? When I was younger, there was one lady, I think she was a famous spy. Her name was Christine Keller. Do you remember her? Christine Keller. She was like a Russian spy, and somebody. Yeah, there was some big person. I think his name was Profula or something. I don't know. Maybe not that name, but I forget what his name was. And he was a famous statesman, and then he became attracted by this professional, beautiful Russian spy, and then everything was lost for him. He lost everything. Attraction like that. But the integrated person who can control his mind at will and who, free from attraction and repulsion, accepts his worldly necessities through his controlled senses, attains tranquility. This chapter is very unusual. I mean, not unusual, but it's not unusual. Actually, we're reading this chapter to people whose loved ones have departed from this world. When we would go and we'd sit with them outside, and then we'd read this chapter. So, I mean, it's unusual in the sense that Krishna immediately is presenting this. He's integrating this. He's preaching to Arjuna. He's talking to Arjuna who wants to renounce the battle. And Krishna's talking about the eternality of the soul. And he's telling Arjuna, please don't talk in terms which seem like you're wise, but really you're not acting wise, because a wise man neither laments for the living or dead. And then it goes on from there, and it goes into this second chapter, Krishna's talk about the nature of eternality, the nature of the soul. Because if I said this before, if you read the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, what Arjuna says to Krishna, if you wrote that nowadays, people would say, "Hey, excellent! This is right on. This is perfect." But actually, and he talks about, if we kill loved ones, what's the point of this war? Everything will be tainted by blood. I would rather live by begging than engage in this warfare. And it's everything Arjuna says. We would think we could expect to read in a newspaper of some Nobel laureate said this to everyone about why war is unnecessary and why it should be given up and everything like that. It would seem, his argument would seem very, very much appropriate today. But Krishna rejects his argument. And then Krishna goes to such a level about talking where he's bringing up the nature of the soul and attachment and renunciation. So many things in this second chapter that you won't read in any other religion or any other scripture. Where are you going to find this about the actual nature of the soul, a description? I have never encountered it except in Krishna consciousness, and specifically in Bhagavad Gita, but it also can be found in the Srimad Bhagavatam instructions, like so many places. Instructions of Maharaj Rishabh Dev to his sons, and the nature of, Bharat Maharaj is giving up his kingdom and his friends and family, and then becoming attached to a deer, contemplating the deer. I mean, there's so many places where the nature of the soul is really described, but I haven't seen that other persons have this kind of information. And Krishna is giving this information to Arjuna as the prelude to a whole battle. And not just a little battle, a huge battle, destroying the whole dynasties and everything. So, let's see. But the integrated person who can control his mind at will and who, free from attraction and repulsion, accepts his worldly necessities through his controlled senses, attains tranquility. Prasade sarva dukhanam hanir ashopajayate prasana chetaso yasol buddhi paryavatishtate. When one attains a peaceful heart, all his sorrows are dispelled. The tranquil person's wisdom swiftly becomes steadfast. When one attains a peaceful heart, all his sorrows are dispelled. The tranquil person's wisdom swiftly becomes steadfast. So gives one some hope. We're in times now that are very disturbing for everyone. I've seen in these times, I've seen several marriages break up, because people are under so much stress and so much difficulty in these times. So how can one attain a peaceful heart? And here Krishna says, what will happen? When one attains a peaceful heart, all his sorrows are dispelled. The tranquil person's wisdom swiftly becomes steadfast. So that we can see this Krishna's instruction. If you can attain a peaceful heart through devotion, then all your sorrows can be dispelled. And there's always some, I also see there's always some benefit. Like, the times are very difficult, but as a result of this difficulty, so much, the attendance of people participating in viewing readings has increased so much. And through that and through these other programs, I've been able to see so many of the devotees. Like when I go to China, I couldn't meet the devotees so much in China. I could be there and I'd meet them one or two, but they're all working. They all have to go to work. And they leave like 7 in the morning, they come back at 8 at night. What can you do when you're there? Then I went to Thailand last year to Chiang Mai. And then the Chinese devotees came to Chiang Mai. They weren't working, and then I could be with them. But now, because of times, nobody can really travel. And yet I'm able to see them. I'm able to meet with them. I'm able to talk with them. Sometimes much more than even if I had flown to meet with them, even in Chiang Mai. Like this morning, so many persons were there. And I'm, anyway, this is what actually gives me, so many things during the day, so many situations can cause one some grief or some anxiety or some depression, and some persons are talking about being depressed. All those things can happen, but actually I feel when I sit down and I'm reading and speaking something from the Shastras, from the scriptures, the holy books, I'm hearing those. And just like I'm speaking to someone else, I'm also hearing that myself. Maybe I comment some things, but I like very much what's being said here. When one attains a peaceful heart, all his sorrows are dispelled. The tranquil person's wisdom swiftly becomes steadfast. Nashti buddhir ayuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nachaba yavatash shantir asantasya kuta sukam. A person bereft of self-control can have neither wisdom nor meditation. Without meditation, there is no peace. And without peace, where is the hope for happiness? A person bereft of self-control can have neither wisdom nor meditation. Without meditation, there is no peace, and without peace, where is the hope for happiness? So let's see. For a person without self-control, there is not wisdom's buddhi, ayuktasya. For such a person devoid of this intelligence, nacha asti, there is no bhavana, meditation on the Lord, purity of thought. Also, you could say happiness, bhavana, or meditation of the Lord, purity of thought, ahavayata. For one whose meditation nacha asti, there is no shanti, peace, asantasya. For a person who has no peace, there is no happiness. Okay. A person of self-control can have neither wisdom nor meditation. Without meditation, there is no peace, and without peace, where is the hope for happiness? So it is true, you have to have some contemplation. You can't just be external. You have to have some internal vision. Person bereft of self-control can have neither wisdom nor meditation. Without meditation, there is no peace. And without peace, where is the hope for happiness? So we've read other translations. Always it comes down to this. If one in one's life does not have any peace, there can be no hope for happiness. If I have that other book here, I can read it because it's a different translation. Srila Prabhupada's translation is based on the translation of Baladev Vidyabhushan. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj is principally based on the translation of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So, and Srila Govinda Maharaj, he studied also. He was with Srila Prabhupada. And he heard Bhagavad Gita from him also. So this is the second chapter and the 66th. Because I really remember this from Nashti buddhira yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nachabha vayata shantir asantasya kuta sukham. One who is not in transcendental consciousness can have neither controlled mind nor steady intelligence, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So you're referring to steady intelligence and meditation in the sense about being fixed in one's intelligence, meditation. But the point of both is without peace, without internal peace, where's the possibility of having happiness if one doesn't have any peace? So, 67. Indriyanam e charatam yanmano nuvidhiyate tadasyaharati pragyam vayornavam ivambasi. As a boat on the ocean is thrown off course by an unfavorable wind, similarly the wisdom of a person lacking self-control is carried away by even one of the roaming senses that the mind might follow. As a boat on the ocean is thrown off course by an unfavorable wind, similarly the wisdom of a person lacking self-control is carried away by even one of the roaming senses that the mind might follow. And we have so many senses. We have sense of touch, sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of hearing, sense of taste. And we can even say the mind is like, within, and if the mind listens to any of these senses, when the sense meets up with the object of the senses, if the mind follows that sense, it can carry one away. Krishna giving the example, just like an unfavorable wind can carry away a boat whose, the sail is up and some unfavorable wind comes and takes the boat far off course. So just by allowing the senses to make contact with the objects of the senses and the mind. I heard someone say, I don't remember which, one of our acharyas said, and if the mind minds the sense, then that can carry one completely away from one's purpose in life. Just by allowing the sense to meet up with the object of the senses. Very difficult, considering all these things. Tasmad yasha mahabahol nigritani sarvasha indriyan indriyartebhyas tasya pragya pratishtata. Therefore, O subduer of the enemy, one whose senses are fully withdrawn from their objects is a person of firmly established wisdom. Therefore, O subduer of the enemy, one whose senses are firmly withdrawn from their objects is a person of firmly established wisdom. So, a person who's described as firmly established wisdom is a person of firmly established wisdom. It's not allowing any of his senses to make contact with the objects or to be withdrawn, not be attracted by the objects of the senses. And that's a person of firmly established wisdom. But Krishna is known as, he's known as Rishikesha. He's known as actually the owner of the senses, and we're meant to utilize all those senses in his service, and then that we have to be able to accomplish. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tashyam jagarti samyami yashyam jagrati bhutani sanisha pashyato mune. And this verse is very beautiful. Almost any devotee, any person who's read this verse that I'm reading now, they all remember this. It's like gives the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, where it says, Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tashyam jagarti samyami yasham jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. That which is day for the self-controlled sage is night for all beings. And that which is day for all beings is night for the sage who sees. Everyone has heard this, right? Everyone has heard this verse. It's so nice. It really helps one to be able to appreciate what's being presented in Bhagavad Gita. That which is day for the self-controlled sage is night for all beings. And that which is day for all beings is night for the sage who sees. So what is the day for the self-controlled sage? That person is interested in devotion, is interested in service, is interested in engaging himself in the service of the Lord, the spiritual master. He's guided by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, deriving some taste from that. And so that's his day. And ordinary persons, not interested. They're not interested. And that which is day for all beings is night for the sage who sees. Everyone else, they're interested in some kind of sense enjoyment. They're interested in some kind of mundane, they have some mundane taste. But actually, we're going to say the devotee is not interested in that level of life, not interested in living that way. I mean, every day it's like that. If one goes, used to be if you read a newspaper, but if you go online, you're bombarded with so many, advertisements or calls for enjoyment, and that's going on every level. And the way they sell this enjoyment is they're very clever. They're very expert. Now there's political race going on, and everything is going on is being sold to us by, the cleverness of people. Like somebody, today I was at home, and somebody called me on the phone and said, "We'd like to ask you a question on this. It's a poll on this election. Who will you vote for? Will you vote for this person or that person?" I just hung up. Make your poll, but don't include me in it. I'm not interested in answering your question.
You should have asked them who they were voting for.
Huh?
You should have asked them who they were voting for.
I had no interest. I had no interest in talking with them, But that's the kind of thing. Every second somebody's trying to control your intelligence. Every second somebody is trying to put some suggestion into your mind. And still, to this day, it's going on that they're trying to sell you something you don't need. All the time. You need a new car, or you need a new bicycle, or you need a new pair of shoes. Something. Why? What I have works. Why do I need something? Because it's new. What you have is old. That which is day for the self-controlled sage is night for all beings, and that which is day for all beings is night for the sage who sees. So it's like, I would say, this indicates a complete different perspective of life, a different perspective. And I can't always say how successful we are, but I would say that we have a different perspective. And if there was, like Srila Maharaj says, if this whole world were on fire, you don't even have an obligation to throw a bucket of water on it. And you can see that. If something happens, I see with many devotees, they'll show so much attachment to so many things, but if they had to, they could just walk away from that. They wouldn't be sure, as long as, my mother used to say when I had an allowance, and she would give me a quarter every week. And I would take that quarter and I would go to the Saturday matinee and I'd spend it all to go get into the movie theater. But my mother would say, that quarter's just burning a hole in your pocket, isn't it? Because she knew how I was. That quarter's just burning a hole in your pocket. So yeah, I'm still like that in the sense that, I'm still like that, but not so much anymore. I'm a little more regulated, but the idea is you still think, oh yeah, well, but actually, if I had to, then could walk away from things and just not bound, don't feel bound by that. Not what my mother used to always say, money is just burning a hole in your pocket. But not so much. It goes on here. That which is day for the self-controlled sage is night for all beings, and that which is day for all beings is night for the sage who sees. The living beings absorbed in mundane life are asleep to the spiritual joy of the realized soul, who remains indifferent to their quest for the pleasures of the senses, devoid of spiritual joy. The living beings absorbed in mundane life are asleep to the spiritual joy of the realized soul, who remains indifferent to their quest for the pleasures of the senses, devoid of spiritual joy. Oh, read this last verse here. And tomorrow we'll continue. But apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudram apa pravishanti advat tadvad kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakamakami apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti advat tadvad kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakamakami. As the ocean remains full and unchanged, though many rivers and streams enter into it, the person of firmly established wisdom attains peace despite all desires entering him. But a person who nurtures desires cannot know peace. As the ocean remains full and unchanged, though many rivers and streams enter into it, the person of firmly established wisdom attains peace despite all desires entering him. But a person who nurtures desires cannot know peace. And all I can say about this is, yes, tell me about it. Because we all have that experience. As the ocean remains full and unchanged, though many rivers and streams enter into it, the person of firmly established wisdom attains peace, despite all desires entering him. But a person who nurtures desires cannot know peace. And we know that from experience. I'm sure we all have some knowledge on that level. But a person who nurtures desires cannot know peace. And that's been proven time and time again. I think you could say since time immemorial, right? That expression. One who nurtures desires can't know peace. That's just but one who has a higher standard of not being able to not be a servant of one's senses. We heard the term Goswami and Godasa. Goswami is a controller of the senses, and Godasa is a servant of one's senses. But everyone who is coming in contact with devotion may not have obtained, outstanding success, getting the highest mark in the class. But they're going on, they're advancing, they're getting some understanding of this, all of us. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to sing Hari Haraya. Today is Ekadasi. You can take some Ekadasi. Ekadasi is called Anukalpa. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jaravaya Nama Jaravaya Maravaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra Janardan Shiva Sari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhatta Raghunath Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. Page 60. Echai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Echai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jaoite Vignana Shabista Puran Jaoite Vignana Shabista Puran Echai Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Echai Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Tasavar Bhara Renu Mora Panchagas Tasavar Bhara Renu Mora Panchagas Kadir Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanevas Kadir Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanevas Janame Janame More Abhilas Janame Janame More Abhilas Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Bhare Manjai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Bhare Manjai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Padma Koryas Shri Guru Vaishnava Padma Koryas Hare Nam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas Hare Nam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas Shri Guru Vaishnava Padma Koryas Shri Guru Vaishnava Padma Koryas Hare Nam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas Hare Nam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudas Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Jai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramansa Paravachaka Charyashta Tara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramansa Paravachaka Charyashta Tara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Barka Ki Jai. Namachar Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhattadash Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Premsi Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vishvavaranya Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Ki Jai. Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Shri Koladvip Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Soquel Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Sevashram Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Madhacharya Vrinda Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai, Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go, Gopi Govardhan, Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Shri Akadasi Upavas Ki Jai, all the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo.